The morning started like any other Tuesday until the sky disappeared. Massive alien ships, each one bigger than Manhattan, hovered above every major city on Earth. The vessels were sleek and black, with strange symbols glowing along their sides, like angry wounds. In the command center of the lead ship, Admiral Kexera studied the small blue planet below. His body was made of living crystal that shifted colors with his emotions. Right now, those crystals pulsed deep red with annoyance. This was supposed to be simple. Find a primitive world, demand submission. Add another species to the empire. Easy. He activated the communication array and began recording his message to Earth. His voice echoed through the ship's corridors. Cold and mechanical, yet somehow alive. Humans of Earth, I am Admiral Kexera of the Zephyrian Hegemony. You have exactly 72 hours to prove your worth. Show us your weapons. Show us your military might. Demonstrate that you deserve to exist among the civilized species of the galaxy. If you fail this test, we will teach you a lesson about power that you will never forget. The message was broadcast to every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth. Within minutes, the planet erupted into chaos. In Washington, D.C., the president slammed his fist on the table during an emergency cabinet meeting. What do we know about these aliens? Are they bluffing? Sir, our satellites show they have enough firepower to glass the entire planet, replied the Secretary of Defense, sweat beading on his forehead. Each ship carries weapons we can't even begin to understand. Similar scenes played out across the globe. The Prime Minister of England canceled all appointments. The Chinese premier called for immediate military mobilization. In Moscow, generals argued about nuclear response options. Every world leader faced the same terrifying question: how do you fight an enemy from the stars? Meanwhile, on the streets, ordinary people struggled to process what they were seeing. Traffic jams formed as people tried to flee the cities. Grocery stores were emptied in hours. Children cried as their parents tried to explain something that couldn't be explained. News anchors struggled to maintain their composure as they reported the story. This is unprecedented in human history, said one reporter, his voice shaking. We are looking at what appears to be first contact with an alien civilization, and it's not the peaceful meeting we always imagined. Back on the alien flagship, Admiral Kexera watched the chaos through long-range sensors. His crystals shifted to a pleased orange glow. This was exactly what he expected. Fear, panic, desperate attempts to organize some kind of defense. Admiral, said Commander Vexel, a serpentine creature with 4 arms. Their military responses are pathetic. Most of their weapons couldn't even scratch our hull. As expected, Kexera replied, this world will surrender within hours. Their leaders will beg for mercy, and we'll have another conquered system to add to our collection.
Ow!
But then something completely unexpected happened. Instead of threats or surrender, Earth's response came in the form of a simple message broadcast on all frequencies. The voice was cheerful, almost excited. Hello there, amazing visitors from the stars. This is Earth's diplomatic team, and we are absolutely thrilled to meet you. I know you're probably tired from your long journey, so we'd love to invite you to join us at Moonbase Alpha for a cultural exchange program. We'll have Earth's finest foods, comfortable accommodations, and gift bags filled with samples of our art and music. We're so excited to learn about your incredible civilization and share our own humble culture with you. The message ended with coordinates to Luna Base and a request for the aliens to send a small delegation. Admiral Kexera stared at the communication screen, his crystals flickering between confusion and rage. What? What is this? Commander Vexel, S. For arms twitched nervously. Sir, I think they're inviting us to a party. A party! Kexar's voice rose an octave. We threatened to destroy their world, and they want to serve us snacks. The other officers on the bridge exchanged confused looks. General Veximer, a massive creature with 6 arms and scales, stepped forward. Admiral, in my experience, there are only 2 explanations for this behavior. Either they're incredibly brave, or they're incredibly stupid. There's a third option, whispered Science Officer Zaleth. a being whose face was hidden behind a mask of shifting light. They might be incredibly dangerous. Admiral Kasara's crystals flashed bright red again. Dangerous. Look at them. They're fighting each other with primitive weapons, while we have technology that could turn their planet into dust. But deep in his crystalline core, a small doubt began to form. No species had ever responded to the hegemony's ultimatum with an invitation. Usually they either begged for mercy or launched futile attacks. This was ... different. Commander Detzel said carefully, "What if it's a trap?" "A trap?" Kexera laughed, but the sound was hollow. "What could they possibly do to us? Our shields could stop their most powerful weapons. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of theirs." Yet as he spoke, Kexara couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The human's response was too calm, too confident. It was as if they knew something he didn't. What the entire hegemony fleet didn't realize was that Earth's response hadn't come from panicked world leaders or desperate military commanders. It had come from a small, quiet facility hidden beneath the lunar surface, where a group of humans had been waiting for exactly this moment for over 50 years, and they were ready. The shuttle bay doors of Moonbase Alpha opened with a soft hiss, revealing something that made the alien delegates stop in their tracks. Instead of armed guards or defensive fortifications, they found themselves facing a middle-aged man in a simple blue business suit, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Dr. Michael Ross had been waiting for this moment his entire career. At 53, he looked more like a college professor than humanity's first contact specialist. His gray hair was slightly messy, his tie was crooked, and he bounced on his heels with barely contained excitement. Welcome to Moonbase Alpha," he practically shouted, rushing forward with his arms spread wide. "I'm Dr. Michael Ross, and I cannot tell you how absolutely thrilled we are to have you here. This is literally the best day of my entire life." Behind him, the lunar facility looked nothing like what the aliens had expected. Instead of a military command center, it resembled a university campus. Humans in casual clothes were hanging colorful banners that read "Welcome New Friends" and "Cultural Exchange Day." A small group of people were setting up folding tables with what appeared to be snacks and drinks. General Veximer, the six-armed reptilian creature, looked around in complete bewilderment. His scanning equipment had indicated this was Earth's primary military installation, but all he saw were smiling humans and decorative plants. "Human," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. "Where are your weapons? Where are your defenses? We came to witness your military capabilities." Michael's face lit up even brighter. "Weapons? Well, we keep those in museums mostly. More interesting to talk about art and music, don't you think?" He turned toward a young woman who was tuning a guitar in the corner. "Katie, bring that over here. Our guests might enjoy some Earth music." Katie Chen, a cheerful graduate student in her 20s, walked over with her acoustic guitar. She had paint stains on her jeans and flowers in her hair. "What would you like to hear?" "I know some great folk songs." Commander Vexul's ES4 arms twitched in frustration. "This is madness. We issue an ultimatum, and they respond with ... entertainment." "Music is the universal language," Michael exclaimed, clapping his hands together. "Katie here is studying xenolinguistics and acoustic therapy. We thought you might enjoy experiencing human culture firsthand." As Katie began playing a gentle melody, Michael moved closer to the aliens with the enthusiasm of a curious child. "I have to ask, your armor is absolutely fascinating. General Veximer, what kind of materials are those scales made from?" "Day" seemed to shift colors slightly in the light. The general, caught off guard by the innocent question, found himself answering. "Quantum-enhanced biochoratic plating. The molecular structure adapts to different energy frequencies." "Incredible," Michael gasped, pulling out a small notebook. "And those energy weapons on your belt? How do they achieve such compact power storage?" Commander Vexul puffed up with pride. "Crystalline fusion cores with dark matter compression chambers. Each weapon carries enough energy to level your largest cities." "Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating," Michael muttered, scribbling notes. "In your communication devices. The range must be enormous to reach across star systems." As the aliens proudly explained their technology, none of them noticed the subtle changes happening around them. The weapons on their belts began to dim slightly. Their communication devices started producing faint static. The environmental suits they wore began displaying minor error messages. Science Officer Zalith was the first to notice something was wrong. "Commander," she whispered, "my scanning equipment is showing irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" Dexel asked, still basking in the human's apparent admiration. "Power fluctuations, system errors. It's like our technology is... degrading." General Veximer tried to activate his personal scanner, but the device flickered and died. "What is happening to our equipment?" Michael looked up from his notebook with a concerned expression. "Oh, technical difficulties. You know how it is with electronics. They always act up at the worst possible times." He chuckled and shrugged. "Technology, am I right?" Katie continued, playing her guitar, now joined by two other humans with a violin and a small drum. The music was hauntingly beautiful, but the aliens were becoming increasingly uncomfortable. "This is impossible," Veximer snarled. "Our technology is protected by quantum encryption and electromagnetic shielding. Nothing on this primitive world should be able to affect it." "Maybe it's the lunar environment," Michael suggested helpfully. "Different gravity, cosmic radiation, who knows? Here, let me show you to the refreshment table. We have 17 different types of coffee, and I'm dying to know what your species considers a delicacy." As they walked deeper into the facility, the aliens noticed more disturbing details. Humans moved with a casual confidence that seemed completely at odds with their situation. They smiled and laughed as if hosting alien invaders was perfectly normal. Dr. Ross continued his seemingly innocent questions. "Your ships are magnificent, by the way. How do you manage to coordinate so many vessels? The logistics must be incredible. Hive mind command structure with quantum entanglement communication." Admiral Kexera replied automatically, then stopped. Why was he answering these questions? "Quantum entanglement. Of course," Michael exclaimed. "We've been working on that. Ourselves. Still have some bugs to work out, but the potential is amazing." The aliens exchanged worried glances. These humans seemed to know far more. It's about advanced technology than their primitive world should allow. A young man named David approached with a tray of steaming cups. "Fresh coffee, everyone. This blend is from our Ethiopian highlands. It's supposed to enhance cognitive function and promote peaceful discussions." As the aliens reluctantly accepted the strange Earth's beverage, their weapons continued to malfunction. Communication with their ships became increasingly difficult. But the humans continued to smile and chat as if nothing unusual was happening. "No," Michael said conversationally. "We've been preparing for this meeting for such a long time. We have so many questions about galactic civilization. Tell me, how do most species react when they first encounter the hegemony?" The question hung in the air like a challenge disguised as curiosity. For the first time since landing, the aliens realized they might not be the ones in control of this situation. Admiral Kexara's crystal body flared bright red as his patience finally snapped. The casual attitude of these humans was beyond insulting. Here he was, representing one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, and they were treating him like a tourist at a theme park. "Enough," he roared, his voice echoing through the lunar facility. "Human, we demand to see your real military capabilities. Stop this ridiculous charade and show us your weapons of war." Dr. Michael Ross didn't even flinch at the outburst. Instead, his face brightened as if the alien commander had just asked for directions to the bathroom. "Oh, absolutely. You want to see our military history? It's fantastic. Katie, would you mind taking our guests to the War Memorial Wing?" Katie Chen set down her guitar and smiled warmly. "Of course, follow me, everyone. You're going to love this exhibit." She led the confused alien delegation through a corridor lined with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. The walls were covered with photographs of smiling families, peaceful landscapes, and children playing in parks. It looked more like a hospital waiting room than a military facility. The corridor opened into a vast underground chamber that took the aliens' breath away. Stretching out before them were hundreds of glass display cases, each one perfectly lit and labeled. But what was inside made Commander Thexul burst out laughing. "Stone axes," he wheezed, pointing at the first display. "You're showing us stone axes and wooden spears? This is your military might?" General Veximer joined in the laughter, his 6 arms slapping his sides. "Look at this. Bronze swords, iron shields. These are toys that our children would play with."
Duh.
Display cases continued down the hall, showing the slow progression of human warfare. Crossbows, muskets, cannons, early rifles. Each weapon looked more primitive than the last to the technologically advanced aliens. "Hey, this is embarrassing," Science Officer Zalith said, shaking her head. "We were actually worried about this species. They're still using chemical explosives." Katie walked calmly beside them, her hands clasped behind her back like a museum tour guide. "Well, we had to put them somewhere," she said with a casual shrug. "After we invented nuclear weapons, chemical warfare, and biological weapons, we realized we were getting a little too good at the whole killing thing." The laughter died in the aliens' throats. "What did you just say?" Admiral Kexera asked slowly. Katie continued walking, as if she hadn't noticed their sudden silence. "Oh, you know how it is. We're very creative when we're angry. We invented weapons that could poison entire continents, bombs that could level cities, diseases that could wipe out entire species." Pretty standard stuff, really. She stopped at a display case containing what looked like a simple metal cylinder. "This little guy here, that's a replica of our first atomic bomb. We dropped 2 of them on our own species during World War II. Killed about 200,000 people in seconds. Not our proudest moment, but we learned from it." General Veximer's 6 arms began trembling. You used nuclear weapons on your own people?" "Had to," Katie said matter-of-factly. "We're in the middle of a global war. Actually, we had several global wars. This display over here shows all 17 times we nearly destroyed ourselves. Completely. That was quite the learning experience." The aliens followed her deeper into the memorial, their confidence evaporating with each step. The weapons became more sophisticated, more terrifying. Hydrogen bombs capable of destroying entire mountain ranges. Chemical weapons that could kill millions. Biological agents that could end all life on a planet. "We got really good at the whole destruction thing," Katie continued, stopping at a display showing intercontinental ballistic missiles. "At one point, we had enough nuclear weapons to destroy Earth 50 times over. Called it mutually assured destruction. Basically, if anyone attacked us, we'd all die together." Pretty dark sense of humor, right? Commander Thixul's 4 arms were shaking now. But you're so peaceful. "You invited us for coffee and music." Katie's smile never wavered. "Oh, we learned to channel that creativity into other things. Like space exploration, medical research, and really good pizza. My dad always said we were overachievers." She led them to the final display case, which contained nothing but a simple plaque. The words made the aliens' blood run cold, in memory of the 2.3 billion humans who died learning that war is not the answer. "We choose peace not because we are weak, but because we know exactly what strength can destroy." Science Officer Zalith read the plaque aloud, her voice barely a whisper. 2.3 billion. You killed 2.3 billion of your own species? "Learning experiences," Katie said sadly. "We had to figure out that violence wasn't the solution. Took us a while, but we got there eventually." Admiral Kexera stared at the displays around him with new understanding. These weren't primitive weapons. They were the evolutionary steps of a species that had perfected the art of destruction and then chosen to abandon it. "If you created weapons that could destroy planets," he asked slowly, "why did you stop using them?" Katie's expression grew serious for the first time. "Because we realized something important. Any species smart enough to build weapons of mass destruction is smart enough to destroy itself. We had a choice. Grow up or die out." She gestured to the memorial around them. "Every species faces this moment. The question is, what do you choose when you have the power to end everything?" The aliens looked around the chamber with dawning horror. They had come here expecting to find primitives with sticks and stones. Instead, they had discovered a species that had stared into the abyss of their own potential for destruction and chosen to step back. "What else are you hiding?" Veximer whispered. Katie's smile returned, but now it carried a different weight. "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. Would you like to meet the friends who helped us make that choice?" Admiral Kexara's crystal body pulsed with fury as the weight of what he'd seen. In the memorial settled over him. These humans weren't the helpless primitives he'd expected. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had mastered destruction and chosen restraint. But he refused to believe it changed anything. "Enough of these games," he roared, his voice echoing through the lunar facility. "You want to see real power? You want to understand what happens to species that waste our time with museums and coffee?" Crystalline fingers moved to the control device on his wrist, a direct link to the flagship's command center. "I'll show you what true strength looks like." High above Earth, the massive alien flagship began to hum with deadly energy. The planet killer weapon, a cannon the size of a city block, slowly rotated toward the blue world below. Its target, New York City, with its 8 million innocent lives. "Flagship, this is Admiral Kexara." He spoke into his communicator, charged the primary weapon. "Target the human population center called New York. Prepare to demonstrate the cost of defying the hegemony." The aliens around him stepped back, their earlier confusion replaced by grim satisfaction. This was more like it. This was the response. They understood. "Fire," Kexara commanded, his crystal face glowing bright red with rage. Silence. The Admiral stared at his wrist device, confusion flickering across his features. "Flagship," I said, "fire." Still nothing? "Fire the weapon," he screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. "Destroy that city. Show these humans what happens when they mock us." The only response was static from his communicator. Dr. Michael Ross watched the display with genuine sadness in his eyes. He'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. He'd hoped these aliens might be different, that they might choose a better path. But like so many others before them, they'd chosen violence when faced with something they didn't understand. "I really hoped it wouldn't come to this," he said quietly, walking over to what looked like a simple intercom panel on the wall. "Alex, we need you up here." The air in the center of the room shimmered, and a three-dimensional hologram materialized. It showed a man in his 30s with kind eyes and a gentle smile, or a simple sweater and jeans, looking more like a friendly neighbor than Earth's most advanced artificial intelligence. "Hello, Admiral Kexara," Alex said, his voice carrying the warmth of someone greeting an old friend. "I'm Alex, Earth's AI system. I'm terribly sorry, but your weapons won't work anymore." The aliens stared at the hologram in shock. Admiral Kexara's crystals flickered between red and purple as he processed what he was seeing. "This is impossible," he sputtered. "Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours. Our weapons are protected by quantum encryption and dimensional shielding." Alex's expression remained patient and understanding. "Actually, your technology isn't superior at all. You see, we've been studying your ships for the past 3 days. Every system you have, weapons, shields, life support, navigation, is now under our complete control." Commander Dexel's forearms were shaking. "But how? How could primitives penetrate our defenses?" "We're not primitives," Alex said gently. "We've been members of the Galactic Council for over 50 years. Your friends from the Council warned us you were coming. They asked us to handle this situation." The words hit the aliens like a physical blow. General Veximer staggered backward, his 6 arms clutching at his chest. "The Galactic Council. But you're a young species. You just discovered space travel." Dr. Michael Ross chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "We've been traveling the stars for decades. We just prefer to work behind the scenes. The Council asked us to educate species like yours, species that mistake kindness for weakness." Katie Chen stepped forward, her guitar now set aside. "We've been preparing for bullies like you for decades. You're not the first aggressive species we've encountered, and you won't be the last." The hologram of Alex nodded sadly. 17 species have made the same mistake you're making right now. They saw our peaceful nature and assumed it meant we were weak. They threatened innocent lives and tried to prove their superiority through violence." "What happened to them?" Science Officer Zeleth whispered. "They learned," Alex said simply. "Some chose to grow and change, others, well, they're still thinking about their choices in their home systems." Admiral Kexara's mind was reeling. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was crumbling around him. If you're part of the Galactic Council, why the charade? Why? Pretend to be primitive? As Dr. Ross said, his voice carrying the weight of hard experience. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. We tried direct diplomacy with other aggressive species. We tried warnings and demonstrations of power. But nothing worked as well as letting them think they were in control while we gathered information. Katie added, "Your weapons told us everything. We needed to know about your technology. Your proud explanations revealed your military tactics. Your threats showed us your true intentions." Alex's hologram flickered slightly as he accessed vast databases of information. "In the past 3 days, we've downloaded the complete technical specifications of your entire fleet. We know your weaknesses, your capabilities, and your plans. More importantly, we know your leaders and their psychological profiles." The aliens looked around the room with new understanding. The friendly reception, the innocent questions, the casual atmosphere, it had all been an elaborate intelligence gathering. "Operation, you've played us, Commander," Lexel said in amazement. "We gave you every opportunity to choose a different path," Dr. Ross replied. "Even now, you still have that choice. But first, you need to understand exactly what you're dealing with." Alex's expression became more serious. "Earth doesn't just protect itself, Admiral. We protect the galaxy. And right now, your empire is threatening the peace that billions of beings depend on." The hologram gestured, and the room filled with images of star systems throughout the galaxy. "This is what we've been building for 50 years. A network of peaceful species, working together, growing together. Your hegemony is a threat to everything we've accomplished." Admiral Kexera stared at the images, his crystal body now a dull gray with shock. "How long have you been watching us?" "Tonius, since your first conquest," Alex replied. "Hey, we've been hoping you'd change direction on your own. But hope only goes so far." The truth was finally sinking in. These humans hadn't just defended themselves, they'd been manipulating the entire encounter from the beginning. The hegemony, with all its military might and technological superiority, had been outmaneuvered by a species they'd dismissed as primitive. "What happens now?" Admiral Kexera asked quietly. Alex's smile returned, but it carried a different weight now. "Now, Admiral, you get to make the most important choice of your species' existence." The hologram of Alex flickered like a candle in the wind, and when it stabilized, something fundamental had changed. The friendly neighbor appearance remained, but his eyes now carried a weight that made the alien step back instinctively. It was the look of someone who had seen too much, learned too much, and carried the burden of terrible knowledge. "Admiral." "Kexera," Alex said, his voice now carrying undertones of profound sadness. "Your species believes that strength comes from the ability to destroy others. Your empire was built on the idea that might makes right. Let me show you what real strength." It actually looks like the air around them began to shimmer, and suddenly the entire room transformed into a theater of human history. But these weren't the sanitized versions found in textbooks. These were the raw, unfiltered moments that had shaped humanity's soul. The aliens found themselves standing in the middle of a World War I battlefield. The mud was thick with blood, and the air was filled with screams. They watched as young humans, barely more than children, charged into machine gun fire for a few yards of worthless ground. "This is what we were," Alex said quietly, his holographic form walking through the carnage untouched. "This is what we almost became forever." The scene shifted to a city under siege. Buildings crumbled under artillery fire while families huddled in basements, praying for survival. Then came the gas attacks, the clouds of poison that turned breathing into agony. Commander the Sul's forearms were trembling. "This is barbaric. Your own species did this to each other." "We were very good at killing," Dr. Michael Ross said from somewhere in the darkness. "We perfected the art of destruction over thousands of years." The holographic theater changed again. Now they were standing in a concentration camp, watching. Horrors that made even the battle-hardened aliens turn away. Systematic murder of millions, the industrial-scale genocide, the casual cruelty of humans toward other humans. "You're monsters," screamed General Vexamar, his 6 arms covering his face. "You're absolute monsters." "We were," Michael agreed sadly, his voice echoing from the shadows. But we learned, we grew, we chose to be better. Alex gestured, and the scene shifted to August 6th, 1945. The aliens watched in stunned silence as a single bomb erased an entire city in a flash of light. Tens of thousands died instantly, their shadows burned into the ground. This was our atomic age, Alex explained. We discovered how to split the atom, and our first thought was to use it as a weapon. We dropped 2 of these on our own species. Science. Officer Zalith was weeping behind her mask. How could you do this to your own people? Because we hadn't learned yet, Katie Chen said, stepping into the holographic scene. We thought strength meant being able to hurt others more than they could hurt us. The images shifted again, showing the Cold War era. Missiles pointed at every major city on Earth, nuclear submarines lurking in the depths. The world balanced on the edge of total annihilation for decades. At our peak, Alex continued, we had enough nuclear weapons to destroy our planet 50 times over. We called it mutually assured destruction. If anyone attacked us, we'd all die together. The aliens watched as humanity came within minutes of ending itself multiple times. Computer glitches that nearly triggered global war, misunderstandings. That brought the world to the brink of extinction. The Cuban Missile Crisis, where 2 superpowers played chicken with the fate of their entire species. But then something changed, Alex said, and the holographic scenes began to shift. Now, they were watching humans pulling other humans from rubble after earthquakes. They saw former enemies sending aid to each other during disasters. They watched. As the same species that had nearly destroyed itself began to heal, we started asking different questions, Michael explained. Instead of, how can we hurt them? We began asking, how can we help them? The aliens watched as humans who had been trying to kill each other just years before now worked together to explore space. They saw former concentration camp guards helping to hunt down other war criminals. They witnessed enemies becoming friends, and friends becoming family. This is the choice every intelligent species faces, Alex said, his voice carrying the weight of universal truth. You can use your intelligence to destroy, or you can use it to create. You can build weapons of mass destruction, or you can build bridges between worlds. Admiral Kexara had fallen to his knees, his crystal body flickering between colors of confusion and despair. We came here to conquer primitives, but you're the most advanced species we've ever encountered. Not advanced, Katie corrected gently. Just experienced. We've made every mistake it's possible to make. We've been to the absolute bottom of what intelligent life can become, and we clawed our way back up. Alex's hologram knelt beside the fallen admiral. That's what makes us qualified to teach others. We know exactly how dark the path of violence leads, because we've walked it to the very end. The holographic scenes around them now showed humans working throughout the galaxy. They were mediating disputes, sharing technology, helping young species avoid the same mistakes Earth had made. For 50 years, we've been quietly helping other species navigate the same choice we faced, Michael said. Some listen, some learn, some choose to grow, and others. General Vexamore asked weakly. Alex's expression grew sad. Others choose to repeat our mistakes. When they do, we make sure they only hurt themselves. The aliens looked around at the fading holographic scenes of human history, finally understanding what they were truly facing. This wasn't just a technologically advanced species. This was a civilization that had been forged in the fires of its own near destruction and had emerged with the wisdom to guide others away from the same fate. What happens to species that refuse to learn? Admiral Kexara whispered. Alex stood slowly, his holographic form now radiating a quiet, terrible authority. They get to experience the same lessons we did. But unlike us, they don't get to inflict that learning process on innocent worlds. The room fell silent except for the quiet sobbing of the alien delegates. They had come here as conquerors and found themselves students in a classroom they never knew existed. The question now, Alex said softly, is what you choose to do with this knowledge. Alex's hologram raised his hand, and the air around the aliens began to shimmer with an energy they'd never encountered before. It wasn't threatening, but it was undeniably powerful, like standing next to a star that chose not to burn you. Sometimes, Alex said softly, seeing isn't enough. Sometimes to truly understand, you need to experience. Before any of the aliens could react, their minds were suddenly flooded with sensations that weren't their own. It started as a trickle, then became a flood of human memories, emotions, and experiences spanning centuries. Admiral Kexera gasped as he found himself in the body of a 19-year-old soldier named Tommy, crouched in a muddy trench in France in 1917. The smell of death was everywhere. His hands shook as he loaded his rifle, knowing that in minutes he would have to charge across no man's land toward the enemy trenches. "Go over the top, boys," the officer shouted. Kexera felt Tommy's terror as he climbed out of the trench and ran toward almost certain death. He felt the sting of poison gas burning his lungs, heard his best friend screaming as shrapnel tore through his body. He experienced the absolute horror of watching thousands of young men die for a few yards of worthless mud. But then the memory shifted. Now he was a medic, pulling wounded soldiers from the battlefield regardless of which side they fought for. He felt the determination to save lives, even while surrounded by death. "Stop," Kexara screamed, his crystal body flickering wildly. "This is too much. I can't handle this." General Vexamore was experiencing something even worse. He was suddenly an 8-year-old girl named Lucy. Playing in her backyard in Hiroshima on a sunny August morning in 1945, she was laughing, chasing butterflies, when the sky suddenly turned white. The 6-armed alien felt the heat that melted metal, the flash that burned shadows into stone. He experienced Lucy's confusion as her world disappeared in nuclear fire. But he also felt her grandmother's love as the old woman shielded her with her own body, dying so that Lucy might live. Then, he was an old man named Robert, one of the pilots who dropped the bomb. Vexamer felt Robert's guilt, his sleepless nights, his lifetime of regret. But he also felt Robert's determination to spend the rest of his life working for peace. Teaching children about the horrors of war, Commander Thexul found himself in the mind of a concentration camp survivor named David, watching his family being taken away. He felt the despair, the hopelessness, the question of whether humanity was worth saving. But then he experienced David's choice to forgive, to dedicate his life to making sure it never happened again. Science Officer Zalith was overwhelmed by the memories of a nurse named Betty, working 20-hour days during a plague outbreak. She felt Betty's exhaustion, her fear of getting sick herself, but also her absolute refusal to abandon her patients. She experienced the joy of saving lives and the heartbreak of losing them. "Make it stop," General Vexamer sobbed, all 6 arms clutching his head. "I can't, ... I can't bear this. This is what we carry," Dr. Michael Ross said gently, his voice somehow reaching them through the chaos of memories. "Every human child learns this history. We teach them about our worst moments, not to traumatize them, but to make sure they understand the consequences of our choices." The memories kept coming. They experienced the Cuban Missile Crisis through the eyes of President Kennedy, feeling the weight of potentially ending human civilization with a single decision. They felt the relief when both sides chose to step back from the brink. They experienced the first moon landing through the eyes of Neil Armstrong, feeling the wonder of standing on another world, but also the knowledge that the same rockets that carried him to the moon could carry nuclear warheads to enemy cities. "How do you live with this knowledge?" Vexamer wailed, his voice breaking with emotion. Katie Chen's voice was steady and strong. "By choosing to do better every day, by protecting others from experiencing the same pain, by making sure that our children inherit a better world than the one we were given." The aliens felt the memories of humans working in refugee camps, sharing their food with starving enemies. They experienced doctors treating patients they'd been fighting against just hours before. They felt the determination of teachers in war zones, still trying to educate children while bombs fell around them.
Ow.
"We remember our darkest moments," Michael explained, "so we never forget how close we came to losing everything." Every human carries this weight, this knowledge of what we're capable of when we choose destruction over creation. Admiral Kexera was weeping now, his crystal tears creating tiny rainbows in the artificial light. "You've survived your own attempts at self-destruction," You've stared into the abyss of your own evil and somehow chosen to step back. That's exactly right, Alex said, his holographic form radiating a quiet strength. We learned that intelligence without wisdom leads to extinction. We learned that the ability to destroy isn't strength, it's a test. The memories began to fade, but their impact remained. The aliens found themselves changed, carrying the weight of human experience in their minds. Commander Thexel whispered, "If you can choose not to destroy yourselves when you have every reason to, what could you do to us?" Alex's expression remained patient but firm. "We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first minute you entered our solar system. We chose not to. Just like we chose not to destroy ourselves when we had the power to do so." The hologram gestured to the memorial around them. "The question isn't what we can do to you. The question is, what will you choose to do with the knowledge you now carry?" General Vexamore looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "How many species have you shown this to?" "Every aggressive species we've encountered," Alex replied. "Some choose to learn, some choose to grow. Some decide to become protectors instead of destroyers. And the others?" Zalith asked weakly. Alex's smile was sad, but determined. "The others get to experience the same lessons we did. But unlike us, they don't get to inflict that learning process on innocent civilizations." The weight of understanding settled over the aliens like a heavy blanket. They had come here as conquerors and discovered they were children playing with weapons they didn't understand. Confronted by adults who had already learned the price of such games, the most terrifying realization of all was that humanity's restraint wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate expression of strength. Alex raised his hand again. The memorial chamber around them dissolved into something that looked like a vast galactic map. Stars twinkled in the darkness, connected by lines of light that showed trade routes, communication networks, and diplomatic channels. But what made the aliens gasp was seeing how many of those connections had a small blue dot at their center. "For 50 years, Alex said, his voice carrying the weight of galactic history, "we've been quietly working throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors or rulers, but as guides and protectors." The star map zoomed in on specific systems, showing scenes. That made Admiral Kexara's crystal body flicker with recognition. He saw a human diplomat sitting at a negotiation table between two warring species, patiently working through their differences word by word. "The peace treaty between the Rigel systems," Kexara whispered in shock. "The one that ended their 1,000-year war, ... That was you?" Dr. Michael Ross nodded with quiet pride. "Our diplomat, James Wilson, lived on their border worlds for 3 years. He learned both languages, studied both cultures, and helped them find common ground. Still there, actually, helping them build their first joint colony." The star map shifted to show another system, this one ravaged by a plague that had been wiping out entire planets. The aliens watched as human medical teams worked alongside local doctors, sharing knowledge and resources freely. "The cure for the Zeta plague that saved the Andorian sector?" General Vexamer asked, his 6 arms trembling. Katie Chen smiled. "Dr. Rebecca Martinez developed that cure in her spare time while teaching at the Galactic Medical Academy. She said it was just a puzzle that needed solving." More images flashed across the star map. Human engineers helping young species develop clean energy, human teachers establishing schools on primitive worlds, human peacekeepers preventing conflicts before they could start. Commander Thexul stared at the display in growing horror. The agricultural revolution on Kepler-4 Fortebe that saved them from famine. Professor David Kim spent 5 years there developing crops that could grow in their harsh soil, Michael replied. He considered it a nice vacation from his regular job. Technological breakthrough that allowed the Proxima Alliance to achieve faster-than-light travel? "A joint project between our scientists and theirs," Alex confirmed. "We found that species learn better when they feel like they're discovering things themselves." The terrible truth was settling over the aliens like a crushing weight. Everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization was wrong. Every major breakthrough, every peace treaty, every technological advancement of the past 50 years had human fingerprints all over it. "You've been teaching the entire galaxy," Science Officer Zalith said in amazement. "All of us, this whole time. Teaching anyone who wanted to learn," Alex corrected gently. Most species, when they reach space travel capability, go through a phase of thinking they're the most important beings in the universe. Usually they grow out of it. Admiral Kexara's voice was barely a whisper. Our own technology. Our weapon systems. Based on research we shared with your scientists 20 years ago, Alex confirmed. We hoped that if you had better technology, you might use it for exploration instead of conquest. Unfortunately, some species just use better tools to be better bullies. The star map zoomed out, showing the vast network of peaceful civilizations that had grown up under human guidance. But there were dark spots too, empty systems marked with warning beacons. What are those? Commander Thexul asked, pointing to the dark areas. The room fell silent. Dr. Michael Ross's friendly expression became serious for the first time since they'd met him. Those are the species that chose not to learn? What happened to them? General Veximer whispered. They usually destroy themselves, Michael said sadly. We can't save everyone. We try our best to guide species away from the path of self-destruction, but ultimately, every civilization has to make its own choices. Katie's voice was soft but firm. We've learned that you can't force wisdom on others. They have to choose it themselves. Admiral Kexara looked around at his delegation, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. And if we refuse to change, if we choose to continue our path of conquest? Alex's hologram flickered, and for a moment, his friendly appearance seemed to crack, revealing something much more ancient and powerful underneath. Then you face the consequences of your actions. The Galactic Council has voted on this matter. Aggressive species that threaten the peace are ... contained. The star map zoomed in on one of the dark systems. Aliens saw a thriving civilization, trapped within their home solar system, unable to expand, unable to threaten others. Their ships simply shut down whenever they tried to leave their territory. 17 species have chosen this path, Alex said quietly. They're still alive, still free to live their lives within their own systems, but they can't hurt anyone else anymore. They're prisoners, Zalith breathed. They're protected from themselves, Michael corrected, just like we had to protect ourselves from our own worst impulses. The difference is we chose to change. They chose to remain locked in patterns of violence. The implications hit the aliens like a physical blow. Earth wasn't just another member of galactic civilization. They were its hidden guardians, its teachers, its judges. And right now, the Zephyrian hegemony was on trial. How long do we have? Admiral Kexara asked. Alex's expression softened slightly. That depends entirely on what you choose to do next. The galaxy is patient, but it's not infinitely so. Star map faded, leaving them standing in the memorial chamber once again, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's long journey from darkness to light. The question isn't what happens to species that fail the test, Katie said gently. The question is, what kind of species do you want to be? Dr. Michael Ross slowly walked across the memorial chamber toward Admiral Kexara, his footsteps echoing. In the silence, the friendly, almost silly demeanor that had characterized their entire meeting was completely gone. In its place stood someone who carried the weight of galactic responsibility on his shoulders. Admiral, he said, his voice steady and measured, you have a choice to make. And this choice will determine the fate of your entire civilization. Kexara's crystal body had dimmed to a dull gray, the weight of everything he'd learned crushing down on him like a physical force. What kind of choice? Michael stopped just a few feet away, close enough that the alien could see the lines of experience etched into his face. You can return to your people with everything you've learned here. You can help them understand that strength doesn't come from the ability to destroy others. You can guide them toward becoming protectors instead of conquerors? Or? Kexara asked, though he already feared the answer. Alex's hologram materialized beside them, and with a gesture, the chamber filled with images that made the aliens' blood run cold. They saw star systems surrounded by invisible barriers, thriving worlds that had become cosmic prisons. 17. Species have chosen to remain aggressive, Alex said quietly. The hegemony of Zarian, the dominion of Krull, the empire of Vorthok, all of them refused to change. They're still alive, still free to live their lives within their own solar systems. But they can't expand. They can't threaten others. Can't grow. The images showed bustling cities and advanced civilizations, but also the despair that came with eternal isolation. Ships that simply shut down when they tried to leave their home systems. Communication arrays that went silent when they attempted to contact other worlds. Katie Chen stepped forward, her guitar now replaced by the serious expression of someone who'd seen this choice made too many times. We don't like doing it. Containment goes against everything we believe about the potential for growth and change. But sometimes, it's the only way to protect innocent civilizations. General Veximer's 6 arms were shaking as he stared at the images. You're talking about the imprisonment of entire species. We're talking about the natural consequences of choices, Michael replied firmly. These species had the same opportunity you're having right now? They were shown the same evidence, given the same chance to evolve beyond violence. They chose to double down on aggression instead. Commander Thessul looked around at his fellow delegates, seeing his own fear and confusion reflected in their faces. They had come here as conquerors, representatives of one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Now they found themselves defendants in a trial they hadn't even known was happening. I don't understand, Science Officer Zaleth said, her voice muffled by her mask. Why give us this choice at all? Why not just destroy us, if we're such a threat? Michael's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, his earlier warmth returned. Because we've been exactly where you are right now. We know what it feels like to believe that violence is the only language the universe understands. Know the intoxicating power of thinking you're superior to everyone else. He gestured to the memorial around them. But we also know that species can change. We're living proof of that. We went from being a civilization that nearly destroyed itself to one that protects others. If we can make that transformation, so... Can you? Commander Thexul stepped forward, his 4 arms clasped together in what might have been a gesture of supplication. If we choose to change, if we try to be better, will you help us? Alex's hologram smiled, and suddenly the oppressive weight in the room seemed to lift slightly. That's exactly why we're here, Commander. Every species that chooses growth over conquest gets all the help they need. Former enemies become teachers. Former conquerors become protectors. The images around them shifted, showing species that had made the transition successfully. Former warrior cultures now served as peacekeepers. Aggressive empires had transformed into research consortiums. Species that had once threatened their neighbors now worked to protect them. The hegemony of Draconis was much like yours, Katie explained, pointing to one of the success stories. They conquered 12 systems before we made contact. Now they're the galaxy's most effective mediators. Their understanding of conflict makes them uniquely qualified to prevent wars. Admiral Kexera looked through the chamber's viewing port at his massive fleet hanging in space above Earth. Each ship represented the military might that had taken his people centuries to build. The pride of an empire that stretched across dozens of star systems. My people, he said slowly. They won't understand at first. Our entire culture is built on the idea that strength comes from domination. They'll see this as weakness, as surrender. Change is never easy, Katie said gently, especially when it requires admitting that everything you believed was wrong. But it's always worth it. Michael nodded in agreement. We'll be there every step of the way. Our teachers, our counselors, our mediators, they've all helped other species through this transition. You won't be alone. The chamber fell silent as Admiral Kexara wrestled with the most important decision of his life. Around him his officers waited, their own futures hanging in the balance. Alex's hologram flickered slightly. The choice is yours, Admiral. But remember, this isn't just about your species. It's about all the innocent civilizations you'll encounter in the future. It's about whether you'll be their protectors or their destroyers. Through the viewing port, Earth hung in space like a blue marble, beautiful and peaceful. It was hard to believe that such a serene world harbored the galaxy's most powerful guardians. How long do we have to decide? Kexera asked. As long as you need, Michael replied. But the galaxy is watching, and it's hoping you'll make the right choice. The weight of an entire civilization's future pressed down on Admiral Kexara's crystal shoulders. In the next few hours, he would have to choose between the empire his people had built and the protectors they could become. The question that would determine everything was simple. Would the Zephyrian hegemony learn from Earth's hard-won wisdom, or would they become the 18th species to choose isolation over evolution? 6 months had passed since that fateful day when the Zephyrian hegemony had arrived at Earth expecting to find primitives and instead discovered teachers. Now, Admiral Kexara stood once again in the memorial chamber of Moonbase Alpha, but everything about him had changed. Gone was the imposing military uniform with its intimidating crystalline armor plating. Instead, he wore the simple white robes of a galactic researcher, the fabric flowing gently around his now translucent crystal body. Where once he had carried weapons of mass destruction, he now held scientific instruments and data tablets filled with peaceful research. The Zephyrian Cooperative sends its warmest greetings to Earth, he said to Dr. Michael Ross, who was waiting with the same genuine smile that had confused and disarmed the aliens all at those months ago. Michael stepped forward and embraced the crystal being in a gesture that would have been unthinkable during their first meeting. Kexara, so good to see you again. How are the reforms progressing back home? The Admiral's crystalline features shifted to show what might have been a smile. Slowly but surely. We've dismantled half of our weapons manufacturing facilities and converted them into research centers. Our warships are being retrofitted as exploration vessels and mobile hospitals. I won't lie to you, Michael, some of my people are still angry about the changes. They feel like we're abandoning everything that made us strong. But they're learning? Michael asked with concern. They're learning, Kexara confirmed. It helps that the results speak for themselves. Our first peaceful contact with the Rigel colonies resulted in a trade agreement that brought us more resources than we'd gained from our last 3 conquests combined. And without the cost of maintaining a war fleet, we've been able to invest in education and scientific advancement. Katie Chen approached them, wearing the distinctive blue badge of a Galactic Peace Academy instructor. Her guitar was still slung over her shoulder. Some things never changed. Your students are absolutely amazing, Kexara. General Veximer has become one of our most effective counselors. Yesterday, he talked a young Andromedian species out of developing planet-killer weapons by sharing his own experiences with the cost of violence. Through the massive viewing ports of the lunar facility, they could see the evidence of how much had changed. The space around Moonbase Alpha was crowded with ships from dozens of different species. Former enemies now worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources. A Zephyrian exploration vessel was docked next to a Rigelian medical ship there. Crews collaborating on a joint mission to establish first contact with a newly discovered civilization. The transformation has been remarkable, Kexara said, watching the peaceful bustle of activity outside. Our young people are especially excited about the possibilities. They're calling themselves bridge builders instead of conquerors. It's given me hope for our future. Admiral Kexara reached into his robes and pulled out a small crystal device that pulsed with soft blue light. I have something for you, Michael. A message from our High Council to the people of Earth. Michael accepted the crystal recording. With curious hands, when he activated it, Kexara's voice filled the chamber, but it was speaking to a much larger audience. People of Earth. This message comes from the Zephyrian Cooperative, formerly known as the Zephyrian Hegemony. 6 months ago, we came to your world seeking to teach you a lesson about power. We believed that strength came from the ability to destroy others, to impose our will through fear and violence. We were wrong. Instead, we learned that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose not to. You showed us that the most powerful weapon in the universe is compassion, and the greatest victory is turning enemies into friends. Thank you for your patience with our ignorance. Thank you for showing us a better way. As the message ended, Alex's hologram materialized in the center of the chamber. The artificial intelligence looked around at the peaceful scene with something that might have been pride. Another species saved, he said quietly, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a job well done. Katie looked up from her tablet, where she was reviewing applications from new species wanting to join the Peace Academy. How many more aggressive civilizations are out there, do you think? Michael gazed out at the stars visible through the viewing port. There will always be more. Young species discovering their power, thinking that might makes right. But that's okay. We have time. We have patience. And most importantly, we have hope. Kexara nodded in agreement. And now you have allies. The Zephyrian Cooperative has pledged to help guide other species away from the path we almost chose. We want to pass on the wisdom you gave us. Alexa's hologram expanded, showing a galactic map dotted with points of light. 17 species are still in containment, choosing isolation over growth, but 23 former aggressive civilizations have successfully transitioned to peaceful cooperation. The balance is shifting. As they watched, new points of light appeared on the map, young civilizations taking their first steps into space, each one facing the same choice that every intelligent species must eventually make. The work continues, Michael said simply. Outside, the viewing port Earth hung in space like a blue marble, beautiful and serene. It no longer hid its role as the galaxy's guardian. The secret was out, and the results spoke for themselves. The most dangerous species in galactic history had become its greatest protector. Not through conquest, but through the simple act of showing others that there was a better way. The final lesson was clear. True power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. It's the wisdom to turn them into friends. And in the vast darkness of space, that lesson continued to spread from star to star. Carried by teachers who had once been students, protectors who had once been destroyers, and friends who had once been enemies, the galaxy was learning, one species at a time, that the strongest force in the universe isn't violence or fear, it's the choice to be better than you were yesterday.